Good afternoon, everyone. As you were told, I am Charles A. Archer, and I'm so excited to be here for the TEDxOcala Idea Share. I believe that TED understands that when you put great people into a room, amazing conversations can happen. And my job here today is to add value to that conversation. So let's start. You want to start your own business. You have the best idea, you have the best concept. You have the best business model, and you also have the best strategic plan. You have great relationships, and you even have investors, which don't come that often. And on top of that, you're starting this business with your best friend. Sounds like a great idea? Okay, maybe not. It could turn out to be the worst idea ever. Who in the audience has ever experienced a moment in their lives where something happened that forever changed the course of their career? Thank you by your hands. I'm glad to know that I'm not alone. Like many of you, I like to travel. Over the years, I've had the opportunity to travel to most continents, many countries, and even more cities. But there was one flight in particular that made a significant difference in my life that transformed it forever. It all started on an American Airlines flight in 1995. I was traveling with a friend and read an advertisement entitled, "Do you want to start your own business?" My friend and I talked about it a little bit and asked ourselves, what might we do in the world to make a difference in the lives of others? We had already been working at a human service organization with the intellectually and developmentally disabled and agreed that our communities in Brooklyn, New York were severely underserved in meeting the needs of people with disabilities, especially when those disabled persons were persons of color. So right there on that plane, without wasting any time, I completed the short application, we chose a name for our new organization, and we identified our new mission. That application was mailed when we landed at John F. Kennedy Airport in New York. I was excited about the opportunity to start my own business and to do some meaningful work in the world. But I was especially excited to work closely with my dear friend and our business partner. Even though he was 10 years older, our families were intertwined. I'm 22 years old, and I've known him my entire life, and we shared a common belief and interest in faith, family, education, career, and being of service. Within months, we were already servicing people in our own communities. We were off to a terrific start, and apparently we were correct. There was a huge need for support services in under-accessed and underserved communities throughout New York City. Today, that nonprofit that we started 20 years ago is now known as the Thrive Network. We provide programs and services to over 1,200 individuals and their families and employ over 600 people throughout New York City. For the first 7 years of this new enterprise, I served as Director of Operations, and my co-founder served as the Executive Director. We were enhancing the quality of life of people with disabilities, giving them an opportunity to live with dignity, respect, and independence. We were employing more and more people, rapidly developing programs, and influencing the community in ways we had never anticipated. Despite this hectic schedule, things were very positive. I worked tirelessly during the day and went to Brooklyn Law School at night. From Brooklyn Law School, upon graduation in 2001, I decided to leave the organization I founded to become a Kings County Assistant District Attorney. Anybody watch Law & Order? Okay. From there, I left that job a short while after to become a lobbyist for the disabled community and the nonprofits that support them. But little did I know that I will soon be faced with a decision that would force me to choose between my friendship and the business my friend and I had started. It was a predicament I would not wish for anyone. And then it happened. I'm on a train headed to Albany, New York, for a meeting at the Capitol, and I get a call that the board has decided to change the leadership of the organization. In containing my shock and my disappointment, I also learned that I am now the one they recommended to replace my friend, a beloved executive and the leader of this organization, a leader who had experienced great success throughout his career in the small-knit communities of executives running not-for-profits in predominantly minority communities. Without all the facts to permit me to understand why he was asked to leave, I was guided by a simple principle. That principle being that I was convinced that we could not disappoint those who depend on us for these vital services. With the support of the board of directors, I was determined to meet this challenge and to be successful at doing so. So, with so much disappointment and regret, I asked myself, how would I lead an organization? What would Charles do in order to propel this organization forward? Would I have the necessary and required support in order to be successful? And ultimately, how would this affect my friendship? How would this affect my friendship? Is that even a question? Is being a good leader and being a good friend mutually exclusive? Or can they coexist? We would hope so, but as you will hear soon, it did not. At first, I didn't give this question due consideration. I thought nothing could jeopardize so many years of love and friendship and laughter and fun, something that would make you feel like your friendship was solid. But all I could think about was that there were people who needed me to lead, and I was going to do everything in my power to ensure that the leadership was appropriate. But here's where my story is the least bit anecdotal. As you know, leadership transitions at the executive level occur frequently, actually more than we would like to admit. But when you add the complicating factor of friendship to the mix, they instantaneously become problematic. But I had to remember at the end of the day, this was a business and not a sensitivity group. So therefore, I had to treat the company and run it like it was a business. How often do leaders in managing their business get momentarily stuck on the issues of other people's feelings, especially when those feelings are either the owner or the founder of the organization? Allow me to offer you a piece of advice. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And more importantly, mind your business. Stick to your values. Otherwise, no one will take you seriously. I had to make a choice, and I chose the betterment of the organization. In the time since being called to lead the organization, I've come to realize that my co-founder was the best friend I never knew. I knew that saying that, and accepting that, would be hard. It was harder to write just to prepare to come here. But it was the hardest thing knowing that for the first time today, I would say to you publicly that he was the best friend I never knew. I often wondered in the beginning, what did I miss most? Did I miss my friend? Or did I miss being naive about how these things really work? Imagine, within the first 12 months, you learn that your best friend, who you loved and respected, you cared for, you believed in, you looked up to, I'm the eldest of 8, so he played the big brother role, has now been accused of misappropriating funds and jeopardizing the future of the organization. Sometimes we miss the most valuable lessons. We consider so many clauses throughout business, but we seem to forget the most important clause, which is the friendship clause. In understanding what needed to be done, I learned to realize that auditors being at your front door 100 days out of 265 you're sleeping in your office for over 100 days because of the tension within the field. Sometimes the most important lessons learned are also the most painful ones. I believe I'm a good friend, and I enjoy all of my friendships. But I do know that when I take on a duty of care, loyalty, obedience, and performance to an organization, the business will come first. Despite so many years of doing good work for so many people, his personal shortcomings and loss of trust of the public, families, and the community considerably jeopardized his ability to lead the organization I believed he loved. Unfortunate for me, I was never at liberty to discuss the issues that warranted his separation. Whether my discretion or my silence was perceived as disloyal to him was and is beyond my control. So without those liberties, I focused on that duty of care, that duty of loyalty, and that duty of obedience to the organization that I was intended to stabilize. But as you can imagine, discretion does not come without cost. The perceived indifference cost me personal relationships with colleagues who were now in line to try to take us over. They cost me friendships with people who were choosing sides and the side wasn't mine. Vendors who were pulling contracts because they weren't sure about who we were. As I said earlier, our families were intertwined. So family betrayal was the topic of Sunday dinner. And then there were staff who ultimately realized that yet they didn't know what went wrong. They were deeply wounded by the loss of the leader. But in meeting me with the challenge and supporting the transition of the organization, they realized that when everybody paddles at the same time, in the same direction, towards the same goal, we all can thrive. Like many of you, I've heard famous stories of terminated executives or separations, like Steve Jobs from Apple or Michael Ovitz from Disney. But I never contemplated what I would do when it was my friendship and or my business. As such, as we all do, I searched the internet for the most valuable lessons that I might have missed from both Apple and Disney. You may recall that in 1985, just 1 year after introducing the Macintosh PC, Steve Jobs was asked to leave Apple by the board of directors and the very CEO that he had handpicked but disagreed with about direction and culture. Jobs was forced out of the company that he built, and the board took the position that the well-being of the business always trumps the personal relationship of the founder. But then, in one corporate history's greatest twist of fate, using that same criteria, 12 years later, they brought Jobs back in order to take advantage of his creative expertise, even if it meant there was no change in his personal style. And as we know, the rest is history. Less than a decade later, Michael Eisner reached out to his friend Michael Ovitz to help him lead Disney. It took Eisner a little more than a year to realize that Ovitz had not worked out, to which he paid him $140 million to leave. And you shouldn't feel guilty, because I would have taken it too. Only to be sued by the shareholders. The shareholders believe that there had been a breach of a fiduciary duty, but ultimately got to a place where they focused on the business and looked beyond personality conflicts. In each of these cases, the boards recognize that governance can blur lines and will more than likely get messy. But when you do business with friends, the company must be run like a business, period. The complication of a friendship clause in business. My story is definitely a little different than these now famous stories of terminated executives. When we're faced with becoming leaders and realizing that we have the opportunity to go on a journey of leadership, we're never given a manual, a guide, or a book about a friendship clause. We often learn about how to supervise and manage and train our relationships, and those close relationships, particularly in business once we're already entrenched in them. It is my limited belief that this is the case because a friendship clause is not a requirement for executive leadership. Executive leadership requires one thing, and that is for us to motivate people towards a vision and to build consensus through their participation. It is in these moments that we're guided on our journey towards better leadership. A journey that requires us to realize that at the end, we will become who we need to become in our organizations. The great, the challenged, and the indifferent, but we still reach a place by internalizing and accepting these leadership qualities. We can now apply them to our successes and even our failures in order to be more influential. So what advice could I leave you here with today? Focus on the purpose at hand. Remember your mission, your vision, and the values of your organization, and ask yourself, did you ultimately fulfill that purpose and promise? Second, understand that people matter. It is and will always be about the collective. It is never about you, one individual, or just the executive. Do the right thing. There are moments in our lives where we know we should be doing the right thing, and we don't. We always consider someone else's feelings. Do the right thing. Stop avoiding difficult conversations. Do not find ways up, through, or around things in order to accommodate a friendship at the expense of the collective. Get things done. Insignificant activities will bring insignificant results. You should be focusing on the things that will get you closer to your mission and your vision. If any of you are thinking, how could I make such a difficult decision? I didn't. I made an easy decision. I made an easy decision to do the right thing. There were people in need. There were staff who needed support. There were vendors. There was the public. There were funders and supporters. And then there was my conscience. And all of it was at stake, and all of it was at risk. I did the only thing that I could do for the betterment of the organization. And since that right decision has been proven to be the right decision, I've decided never to look back. So my final piece of advice to you is, lose a friend because there is no friendship clause in business. Thank you.